VOA Learning English, this is the Technology Report.
From VOA Learning English, this is the Technology Report.
Workers at the damaged Fukushima Daiichi nuclear plant in Japan
Workers at the damaged Fukushima Daiichi nuclear plant in Japan
will soon begin another cleanup effort. More than 1,500 nuclear fuel rods are to be removed from a damaged
More than 1,500 nuclear fuel rods are to be removed from a damaged storage pool
30 meters above ground inside the Reactor 4 building.
30 meters above ground inside the Reactor 4 building.
TEPCO, the Tokyo Electric Power Company, owns the nuclear power station.
TEPCO, the Tokyo Electric Power Company, owns the nuclear power station.
Critics say TEPCO should not be trusted to carry out the operation.
Critics say TEPCO should not be trusted to carry out the operation.
However, TEPCO General Manager Masayuki Ono says the operation has been carefully planned. TEPCO had to rebuild the Reactor 4 building
after a hydrogen explosion destroyed it.
TEPCO workers will first remove pieces of wreckage left by the
TEPCO workers will first remove pieces of wreckage left by the explosion.
Then workers will remove the fuel rods one by one. They will use a crane suspended
above the building.
The fuel rods must not touch each other or break. Nuclear experts warn that any accidents could cause an explosion
Nuclear experts warn that any accidents could cause an explosion many times
worse than the one in March 2011. Mitsue Murata is Japan's former ambassador to
Switzerland and an anti-nuclear activist.
He notes that problems over the past 30 months, including radioactive water
leaks, have raised questions
about TEPCO's efforts. He says if the worst happens and workers have to withdraw, then it could be considered what he calls the beginning of the ultimate catastrophe of the world. Japan's Agency for Natural Resources and Energy says TEPCO alone
Japan's Agency for Natural Resources and Energy says TEPCO alone is responsible for safety.
But to support TEPCO, the agency has sought advice from specialists around
the world.
nuclear inspectors have approved TEPCO's plan to
Nuclear inspectors have approved TEPCO's plan to remove the fuel from Reactor 4.
remove the fuel from Reactor 4. The process is expected to begin in November and be finished in
The process is expected to begin in November and be finished in 18 months for VOA Learning English.